There you go. And so during this second discussion, we are going to discuss how, while advocating for our seat at the table, women have learned lessons that can help open doors for other marginalized professionals. We will talk about how we can use these lessons to create a more diverse and equitable profession, and how we can help women outside of firm leadership advocate for themselves and their colleagues. I'd like to introduce our panel moderator. Kathy Galvin, FAIA, is an architect, urban designer, and planner whose career has been focused on creating equitable, sustainable, and authentic places for all people across all generations. A principal at Galvin Architects, Kathy holds a bachelor degree in economics and geography from Boston University and a Master of Architecture from the University of Virginia. For 8 years, Kathy served as an elected official on the Charlottesville City Council, and Kathy currently serves on the AIA Virginia Executive Committee as Vice President for Advocacy. Thank you, Kathy, for leading us today, and we really are looking forward to this panel discussion.
So is it showtime?
Yep,
okay.
Showtime.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that nice introduction, Rebecca. And I have been listening with great interest to the previous conversation about what COVID did in our office dynamics and creating different cultures in our office organizations. And so it's interesting, given that we're going to be talking about women literally in leadership and how we can be better advocates for ourselves and in our communities, and for those that have already also and continue to experience being marginalized. I do want to kind of draw a connection between the previous panel and what we're about to talk about. It's interesting how the COVID experiences ironically made traditionally so-called women's issues universal issues. And by that, I mean the need for flex time to be able to take care of our families, the need for caregiving, creative breaks, so that we begin to treat ourselves more holistically and our colleagues more holistically, and overall more healthy. I bring that up because in the process, I just pulled up a Harvard Business Review article from 2019, pre-COVID, which said, it was by Thomas Premuzic, as long as we associate leadership with masculinity, women will be overlooked. And it goes on to say that as long as we associate leadership with masculine features, like aggressiveness, like task orientation, like people were talking earlier about intruding upon everyone's time at 9 o'clock at night, female leaders will be evaluated negatively. And this is a quote, while overall gender differences in leadership effectiveness are generally non-existent, studies show that men tend to perform better when the focus is on managing tasks, while women tend to focus and perform when the focus is on managing people, which includes attending to people's attitudes, values, and motivations. That's what we were talking about the whole first panel, attending to the needs of each one of our colleagues. And so this could be a moment for women to finally assert leadership in this profession in a very tangible way, which would get at Becca Mesny's issue of how do we change the dynamics in our profession and our cultures in our offices, so that, like for me, when I was having children, I had to quit and start my own practice, hang out my shingle. I was not getting any maternity leave. And so, and I'm considerably older than you, Becca, but anyway, so with that, I am so excited to have this panel. The women that are involved with this panel discussion are accomplished, represent different perspectives and experiences. And I'm going to launch right in with the first question. So how do you define advocacy at the personal level, at the community level, and at the firm organizational level. And I'm going to start with April Drake. Sorry.
How did I know you would start with me? Hi, everyone. I'm April Drake. I am a senior project architect at HDR. And how I would define advocacy at all those different levels, I think I'll start with the firm level. I thought about this one a lot over the weekend, and I realized that my mom is actually a union worker. So she worked for the post office for 40 plus years and was a part of the American Postal Workers Union. And all she did was advocate for people and write grievances and, take labor laws into consideration. And I realized that ever since I started working, that's what I've been doing, just not in a union way, but applying those different things that I learned from her to how I, treat people and how I look at the workforce. And so I defined advocacy really in a firm way. Just unfortunately, I don't know another word for it, but it's about people. It's about the health of people, the work style of people. How can I make the atmosphere and environment better, for the people that are within it? And so I don't have an exact word for it, but I know that everything I do is for my colleagues, is for everyone that I am with every day, and making sure that when they come to work, it's not a miserable environment. It's somewhat of a happy environment. If we're not laughing at least once a day, then, what exactly are we doing here? Because, life is happening while we're at work for 8+ hours a day. So my advocacy at work is really just geared towards people in the community. I've always just wanted to see more faces like myself come into the profession. So just going out and volunteering with the Girl Scouts and trying to just teach them, what architecture is, or letting them see an architect early on in life. And Katherine can attest to this. I know she does a lot of this as well. And so just being out there and just supporting groups and just letting them know that we exist, and that when they do decide to come into this profession, that we'll be here to support them. And so a lot of what I do is in service of people and in service of the next profession. So I know I didn't completely answer the question, but there's a lot of other people on the panel, and so I want to make sure everyone else gets a chance as well.
Thank you, April. And how about you, Barbara Benesh?
Hey everyone, I'm Barbara also. I'm very well known as Babs, founder and architect of Be Grace Design. And, in echoing what April said, what's really unique to our profession is this aspect that runs beyond our 9 to 5 or whenever your flex time is, that we support and honor the health, safety, and welfare of our community. It's reflected in our buildings, our design, our office spaces. And so I think here we really hone in on this sense of welfare, how we care about our children, our family members, our community, how we donate our time and volunteer. And I think that this essence of welfare is how we begin to advocate and come in as support. Again, we're not the hero. We are, I guess, Yoda in a sense. We want to help guide and we want to help lead, but from the ground up. And I think in that essence, that's when we become the best advocates, is when we genuinely care about the welfare for others.
Thank you. Now, how about Josephine?
Hi, everyone. I'm Josephine Arbaugh. I am in Blue Ridge Chapter, Virginia. I'm consultant right now in a consultant role, kind of transitioning. So I have not been in the office setting for a little while, I guess, since right before the pandemic started. But I've worked in such a variety environments and firms, from residential focus with a team of less than 10 to ACOM, which has been, multinational with thousands of people. So I've experienced a variety of cultures in the office space. And one of the things that I realized when I look at the questions was, self-advocacy is something that I promote a lot with the women that I've mentored over the years. And I recognize that by self-advocating, we are advocating for others like us. So the past few years, I've been advocating mainly for and empowering women that are working moms, because that is the stage that I am in. So self-advocacy starts with identifying, knowing, and communicating what our needs are in that moment so that we can perform the work in service of our clients, in service of our firms, and in service of our community. And by self-advocating and empowering women to understand how to do that and build them with the skill sets to be able to self-advocate, we can advocate in our organizations and we can advocate in our communities as well.
That's a very direct correlation between community advocacy and advocacy rooted in a woman's perspective. How about Katherine Williams?
Hi, everyone. I'm Katherine Williams. It's hard following three people who have like said a lot already. I think at the firm level, it's for me, it's about treating all my team members as valuable. I work on the owner side, so I'm dealing with all aspects of architects and contractors as well as facilities. So making sure that all of the team members are seen as a value to the project and having an equal place to sort of like add their opinions and their expertise. And I think on the community side, similarly, it's figuring out like where your expertise fits in, or where there are voices that are missing, that you can bring those to the table. And for me, that has taken a lot of different venues, from, like my local HOA board to like offering comments to like planning projects that are happening in my city and making sure that that things that maybe a council or commission or a plan reviewer hasn't thought about are being brought up when those projects are coming up.
Well, thank you. I think now we can kind of telescope from the big picture question down to your individual personal perspectives to, in a way, flesh out what that more abstract idea of advocacy means in your own personal life. And you can get as detailed and as personal as you want. We're among very empathic listeners right now. I can feel it. So how did you advocate for yourself early in your career? And how has that evolved over time? And do you have any lessons learned to share, especially for the next generation of architects, particularly women in architecture? So I'm going to stick with the same sequence. So April, you're up.
Well, I can't go without letting Kelley give her original.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Definition.
I was wondering. I appreciate that.
Oh no,
I thought we were conserving time.
Back up, rewind. I'm sorry, Kelley. I'm sorry. You got to talk about the big picture.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you, April. Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you, April.
Yeah,
it takes a village to run a panel.
So I'm Kelley Holmes, an associate and project architect with Quinn in Richmond, Virginia, and for me, all of those different levels are intertwined in a way. To me, the most important task that we have as architects is to really leave the profession better than when we entered into it, and to really make it a place of growth and nurturing and belonging for that next generations of designers, but also more importantly for the next generation of community members. So those people that we're interacting with either directly or indirectly through our work. And so I try to use my professional experience in education environments as well as contributions to the community through a variety of volunteer work to just help create those equitable environments that can positively impact the quality of a person's life. So for me, advocacy is really about giving your time and taking action when and where you can, no matter how big or small. And personally, I very intentionally aligned myself with a firm as well as specific volunteer opportunities with Richmond Women in Design, the ACE Mentor Program of America, NOMA, et cetera, which have allowed me to do the work of advocacy at varying levels and scales, whether I'm at home, in the office, out in the community, but allowing to create that change and support for others on their journeys.
Thank you very much. And I'll make it up to you, Kelley. Okay, so now we can kind of go forward again. And I'll just repeat the question. In April, you're going to be the first one talking. So this is going to be zooming into the personal from the bigger picture question of advocacy. How did you advocate for yourself? Be as specific as you want, as detailed as you want. And how has that kind of level of advocacy in your career evolved over time, when you were just starting out to now? And any particular lessons you could share that could be particularly useful for the next generation, particularly of women and those who are underrepresented in our profession, woefully underrepresented.
All right, I'll try to start. I will say that I did not do a good job advocating for myself in the when I started my career. I just didn't. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't necessarily I had mentors when it came to detailing and documenting and learning how to put together a set of construction documents, like doing my job, but I didn't have a mentor about what it meant to be in the profession and navigate through the profession and how to network and how to align myself with different groups. And so at the very beginning, for the first 7 years, I would just say that I was just there, just working and just trying to be a sponge, but I was not advocating for myself. I was not making the amount of money that I should have been. I wasn't having those hard conversations with the right people. And it took me, looking at my finances and looking at, things that I knew that I was going to need to do. Like I was going to need to buy another car. I was going to need to, potentially live in a bigger place or live on my own, living with my mom still in my early 20s. And so I decided to move to Northern Virginia. And so when I did that, again, I wasn't sure what to do, but I said, let me try going to the AIA chapter house. And so I went to the AIA Nova chapter house and I met Joanne Murray and ended up aligning myself with women in architecture. And then from there, meeting Kathy and meeting Katherine and Melissa and meeting all of these great women. And from there, learning what it meant to be a woman in architecture, to, be a senior project architect, to being a project manager, and understanding what that meant, what my responsibilities were to myself, what my responsibilities would also be, back to the community. And so they actually taught me how to network. And so, and then how to advocate for myself, which I didn't know how. And so now I still learning, but learning how to have those hard conversations, with people when it comes to, salaries, when it comes to negotiating, when you do, switch jobs. And now I'm, paying it forward. So trying to be that person for someone else. I didn't have that person that would advocate for me. So how, aligning myself with people in my own office and then helping them have those hard conversations with senior leadership and having some of those hard conversations for them, they don't even know about, but having them, having it for them because I wish someone had done the same thing for me. So it's really been, I can't say enough about having aligned myself with AIA Nova. And I know other people have had similar experiences with NOMA and, other organizations that they, that are in the DC area as well. So, but I would, for me, a lessons learned to the next generation would just be to reach out and to, to those organizations and find a group of people there that you connect with.
Well, thank you, April. You've also touched upon another question that we'll maybe get into a little bit more deeply as we move along, which is about those taboo topics, such as asking for the right rate of pay. So Barbara, Babs, how about you?
So Kathleen, I'll take a different perspective on this. I would say I did in terms of advocating for myself, it was putting my quality of life and my passions first. And so I did all the things that everybody said, no one will think you take your career seriously. I went part-time because I had this opportunity to travel. I left the industry completely because I just needed a break. And then I sold fine art in the French Quarter, and I started my watercolor business, which, I made all these decisions that, and God forbid if you don't stay at one firm for a whole year, what will people think of your resume? But for me, it really came down to this quality of life and what makes me happy. And I think in traveling and looking at other career fields and what we can do with our skill sets that we have as designers and architects, or what led us here, we realized it is applicable in other areas. And so, ultimately it led me to where I am, to give me the confidence to start my own firm. And so I think in doing so, helped me advocate for myself to realize, okay, I do need to start my own firm. If I can't get a seat at the table here, I'm going to make my own table. If I'm not happy with the salary, I'm going to figure out how to go, make my own salary. So I think it started from quality of life, what makes me happy, and to say that, okay, I can do this. And you take different paths and you look outside of our direct linear, you graduate from school and you go straight into architecture and that's your trajectory. Like there's so much more outside of it. So that's, I would say, from advocacy, I took a little bit of a different angle in building my career with that.
Well, that it almost puts you more in keeping with, Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci. I mean, that's, our profession was all about doing all the arts. And then we've allowed ourselves to become so narrow and so confining. And I'm sure that there were Renaissance women in that group too, but we only know about the men, and the white European men, I might add. So now I will not forget, Kelley, you're up.
So I would say my experience is very similar to April's, where it was kind of a learn as you go. You make those mistakes and you go over those hurdles as you progress and go throughout your career. So early on, I first job out of school, I made a mistake. I interviewed with a firm that I thought, oh, this is great. They have this deep history in municipal work. I really want to be working with the community and affecting the people in it. But I didn't ask the right questions during the job interview of, oh, what do you have on the boards now? And it turns out, I show up my first day and I'm like, hey, what am I working on? And they're like, we're doing 2 casinos. And I'm like, whoa, this does not align with my values as a person. So that was kind of a tough year for me. But really recognizing quickly, I need to make a pivot. I got to make change for myself and do what's right that aligns with my values and what I'm trying to get out of my career. Because, I was doing the stereotypical designing stairs and hotel rooms and stuff like that. So I made a shift into going to a much smaller firm in a different city and getting a different level of experience. And then, the recession hit, went to grad school, then, did exhibit design for a year and then came back to architecture. But all that said, some of the lessons I took from that was, and even as, I've gone through the last 8.5 years with Quinn Evans, learning to share your interests with people, especially folks who are, staffing your projects. If you find out about an opportunity that's really of interest to you and you want to be part of, go tell somebody, because they can't make room for you if they don't know about it, right? And if you're ever having a moment of struggle, whether it's just design process or feeling overwhelmed by the pile of work on your desk, tell somebody. Allow yourself to be vulnerable, because it opens opportunity for support, and that support will ultimately help you grow. And then also taking the time to seek some opportunities for leadership inside and outside of where you work. So you can start small and eventually it'll build. So it could be anything from joining a small internal committee within your office. It could be volunteering. It could even be like seeking out specific programs for growth, like AIA Virginia's Emerging Leaders in Architecture program is amazing. Class of 2019 right here. Like, so really just learning as you go, figuring out how to be that self-advocate, but also finding advocates around you. Because sometimes it helps to tell them your goals such that you'll go and be motivated to meet them. But another thing, the last lesson learned that I'll put out there is I was really inspired by Pascal Sablon's speech at ArchEx back in 2019, where she was like, I went out and I submitted for every award that existed because I was going to elevate myself and give myself a platform out there in the industry as a woman and as a woman of color in architecture. And I thought that was really amazing. And so I took that to heart. And so, you know, don't be afraid to submit for an award. Be the builder of your recognition, put yourself out there and don't give up. And if you don't get it the first time around, be persistent, go for it again. So
that's really very, it sounds simple, but it's hard. And so, Josephine, what would you like to add to this conversation?
Well, my story is pretty similar for self-advocacy. I would say that I kind of went through a very abrupt transformation from when I started and not knowing what self-advocacy was, or, you know, how to even do it, to being a little bit of a rebel. So I do have to say that I benefited from great mentors early on in my career that saw the potential in me and pushed me out of my comfort zone a few times. Whether it was, you know, and it wasn't necessarily a female, because when I started at you know, large corporation, I was one of the few women. But some of the great mentors that, you know, taught me the skill sets to put myself on the table. You know, don't be afraid, ask for forgiveness, not for permission, kind of thing. You know, when people said, you know, you can't do urban planning and architecture at the same time. So it's kind of those challenges and those no's sometimes that I had to learn to take as opportunities to grow better as a professional. And that's why I have kind of from there learned to show other women that I come across with in the industry and outside the industry to advocate for themselves. You know, ask for what you need. Find out what you need and ask for it without being afraid. And I feel like one of the opportunities that I had, or one of the lessons that I had that I would share with other women in architecture is, don't be afraid of the unknown and the new opportunities that come your way, because I know we come from this mentality sometimes that our careers are linear, but they're not. And Barbara touched on that. You know, we learn so much from our life experiences, and sometimes that requires a shift. And it might not be the type of architecture you thought you were going to do, or the position in the firm that you thought you were going to have, or even the involvement in an organization like AIA. As a student, I was not involved at all. It took somebody like Corey or Helene, or, you know, to put me in those positions and opportunities and push me a little bit outside of my comfort zone to really learn to grow into my role.
Well, that this is a discussion that shouldn't end in 5 minutes. I mean, anyway, thank you so much. And Katherine, you can bring us on home on this topic. And it's, again, your personal advocacy.
Yeah, I think my personal advocacy kind of mirrors a lot of other people who, or a lot of other women, what they were saying as far as recognizing where I wanted to be, and or at least like having an idea, whether that came from talking to mentors or just exploring other avenues and making moves when I needed to. I've been all over the industry, and being back on the owner side now partly came because I had done so many other things. Like I wasn't just in traditional architecture. I'd worked for a developer and also worked for a general contractor. And all those experiences sort of wrap into what I'm doing now. So, you know, not thinking that the traditional path has to be the path that you pursue. As far as architecture, I think in school we're not necessarily taught that, or at least I think I wasn't when I was going through architecture school. It was like, you know, everyone's going to go into a firm and you're going to like pursue a path where you come in as a junior designer and you work your way up to principal. But that has not at all been my path. And so I think just recognizing that there are many ways to be an architect and figuring out what that means for you and like where your skills actually are the strongest, and figuring out how to do the thing that you're strongest at and like the most, versus, you know, getting stuck in one place that maybe you're not happy with, or is not suited to what you really want to be doing or have an interest for in your career, is the best way, I think, to self-advocate.
That, again, the insights are very rich, and it seems that every single woman on this panel has had diverse experiences outside and inside their firms that have fed into their to your ability to be a better architect, a better human being, a better friend and colleague, your relationships in general. So the interesting thing, though, again, getting to this idea of leadership, to become the leader in a firm, there's still that model, right? The model of the stepping stone that you commit to a long time. And we're all kind of creating our own firms instead, because we're saying, no, this model doesn't work. If I want to go and sell art in the French Quarter, if I want to run for political office, if I want to do urban planning, any number of these things, they enrich the kind of work we do as architects. And design thinking as architects are that's a problem-solving skill that can apply to all these things that we're so fascinated with. So I think we have a little bit of time left, and I want to go round robin really quickly with one tangible action item that you would convey to women in the profession of architecture to speak up and advocate for themselves, who are looking for a seat at the table. So really, maybe just a sentence. April.
Speak up and ask. Don't, you know, whether it's negotiating when you first get to that job offer, you know, put it out there, ask for that additional amount of money that you think you're worth. And then once you're in the firm, if you want something, if you want to have influence, ask, tell someone. So right now I help do interviews for, you know, when people come in for certain levels of, you know, project architect, I am now sitting on that committee that does that interview. And so I have some influence there as to, who we select, but I had to ask. No one came to me and said, would you like to do this? No, I had to go to someone else and said, I would like to do this. I would like to, and this is why, I would like to, sit in on these interviews. So I would just say to ask, advocate for yourself by asking. The worst thing you can say is no.
Thank you. And Babs, how about you?
I would say, first and foremost, know your worth and take that time to invest in yourself. Go do the Clifton Strengths Finder, because every single person on this panel today, on this call today, you have something unique to bring to the table. So there's a place for you. You need to figure out where it is, and to do that, start from within.
Very good. Kelley.
So I think we have to acknowledge that giving a seat at the table isn't enough, that we have to help those individuals once they're at the table to speak up and be heard as well. So I would just put it out there as, get started, take action, no matter how big or small. Get involved with organizations like Women in Design or Women in Architecture, ACE, NOMA, become a mentor. Because anybody can be a mentor, and you should be generous with your knowledge and help those who are behind you coming up the pipe. And I'd like to do a pitch for AA Virginia right now. They are trying to connect professionals one-on-one with Virginia college students, which is a great place for folks to start. And Kathy and Rhea can tell you that currently they have a ton of women students signed up and seeking mentors, but not enough women professionals stepping up to mentor. So I'd like to advocate for folks on this call to really consider getting out there and helping support that next generation.
That was very good messaging. Thank you. Josephine.
I would say that would help me the most was a change in mindset, in recognizing that leadership's not a title. Leadership is a state of being, a character, or a state of mind, and you do not need to have people working under you for you to be a leader. Everyone here is a leader, and we start by leading ourselves. So be resourceful, find what you need, understand what you need, communicate it, and go after it.
Very, very good. Thank you. And then Katherine, you're the last word.
Kelley sort of took some of my thunder, but I wanted to say that my first position when I got out of college was at a firm that I was very spoiled at, because I was at a small firm where the owner was very family oriented. He was also very involved in his community. Like, he was doing all the things. And so, like, as a young architect, it was great to see that, because it was like, I didn't have that sort of like toxic environment where I was like struggling as a young architect. And so I think I've carried that forward in everything I've done, and I've like tried to be that for young architects who are following behind me, and people who I mentor, people who, you know, call me and ask me questions about my career and that kind of thing. So I think if the experience that you wanted to create or that you wanted to have when you were a young architect, try to create that for someone else is one of the best things that we can all do for our profession, because that's the only way that we're going to like keep people in our profession and keep younger architects on the path to becoming architects.
Thank you. Well, that ends our panel discussion, and we're going to be opening it up to Q&A from the audience. I might need some help on how to do that. Yeah, that's what my schedule says.
Yeah, I think that we have time for one or two questions. Feel free to unmute and speak up if you have a question. And then Kathy, if you could help field a particular panelist to answer, I think that would be helpful.
So the questions coming in through the chat, or are they coming in people just speaking up?
People can speak up.
Okay. There's a lot of food for thought. Please don't hesitate. Ask, as April said.
So I just wanted to make a comment about what Katherine just said. I've known Katherine probably for about 15 years, and every time there was any event that we did, whether it was state or local or like national, Katherine was there as a young student. She didn't have money maybe to pay for these things. She volunteered to be an intern, you know, to help out. And so she has seen really the full breadth of our how women in architecture works, and just how architecture itself works by just sort of reaching out. I really have to applaud her.
And I'm sorry, who was that just spoke?
That was Joanne Murray.
Thank you, Joanne.
Thanks, Joanne.
I was wondering if I could go off script for a second and ask Sean, who has spent so many years advocating and with advocacy, if he has particular thoughts to share on advocacy. You're on mute, Sean. I'm sorry, you're on mute. Shouldn't have called on you.
Yeah, our advocacy is critical, both for at multiple levels, the profession, within our firms, and individually. And it just takes time to gain the confidence to have that voice to advocate. And it is really satisfying to hear the confidence in all of your voices this morning as you shared your experiences. and gained confidence in being able to advocate where you may not have been able to advocate at first, because it was sort of feel your way as you go. Nobody gave you a checklist of how to go about advocacy. You figured it out. And our profession is not guaranteed that we're going to be relevant in 5 years. There's a lot of competing forces out in the world that come from a different viewpoint on how the built environment should be maintained and built. And our relevance just totally depends on how well we advocate, both as individuals and as firm members, as firm leaders, and as we advocate to all the way, including government advocacy and advocating to lawmakers within the General Assembly in Virginia. So I think you're all on the right path, and I would encourage you to continue that advocacy robustly, and to, as many of you touched on, look for opportunities to pass that on and to the next generation, and help grow the next generation of advocates. Thanks, Teresa, for asking.
And thank you, Sean, for that comment, and again for pulling us out into the more big picture. And also, given our strengths and the particular kind of orientation that we as women bring to the table, there's a lot of relevancy now is tied to coalition building. And by that means looking at our allies in the built environment space. It is going to be the land use and transportation planners. It is going to be people that are doing the park design, as well as the people implementing and building all the landscapes that we call urban and suburban. So there is a broader field. It's the development community that Katherine had experience directly with. So there's a lot of allies in the built environment, and maybe that might be the way we all can think of ourselves, where we are creators of the built environment. And what does that built environment do for us? What must it do for us moving forward if we're going to maintain the health of the planet as well as ourselves? And the last thing I'll add or end with is, I have over my desk a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt. You must do the thing you think you cannot do. And she said that, the wife of FDR during World War II, when women were always in the shadows, but you must do the thing you think you cannot do. And voila, you can do it. So with that, I think now we can move into the breakout sessions. Am I right, Kathy? Gusky?
Yeah. Thank you so much,
Rebecca.
Kathy. Yeah.